Please listen carefully.
Hello, and welcome back to the Thoughts from Your Gal Pal podcast. My name is Clara. I'm the gal behind the thoughts, and if you are watching in today, you will see that we have a little bit of a different setup. I have a few special guests with me here in Atlanta, and Maggie, my sister of Fly Lady Cleaning Method episode fame, is here to help me moderate a very special episode with a guest who has been mentioned a few times in the pod. But what is our favorite holiday in May, Maggie? 3, 2, 1. Memorial Day. Mother's Day. Mother's Day episode. We are here with my mother, Virginia, to talk a little bit more about being a mom, being a grandma, and all things mom. So, you know Maggie.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
She's also my mom.
Funny how that works. Before my mom even takes the mic, we want to brag on my mom a little bit in ways that she's saving the world.
Yeah, so Virginia is single-handedly saving the world.
Single-handedly.
So I want to know if, any of you listeners have ever gotten a call from the American Red Cross. That's a pretty easy one to ignore for most.
I know some people have it in their phone as Red Cross do not answer.
Yeah. That's not Virginia. Virginia has given a lifetime, gallons of blood that would probably shock most. How many gallons do you think it is?
I don't know how many gallons, but I have given at least 125 times in my life.
That's
dedication.
It's dedication. It is regularly scheduled. It's on her. How often do you give blood?
Every 8 weeks.
That's how often you can give blood, and she's doing it. So giving blood is one way that she is saving the world. She also has some incredible recycling efforts that would really make anyone happy.
Let's give a few examples here.
Mom, tell us a little bit about your morning coffee routine. You're a member of the Panera system.
I don't want her to talk yet. We need to all introduce her.
Okay, fine.
She's already had too much mic time.
She already has. Okay, so Virginia is a member of the Panera reward system where you can pay a monthly fee and get free coffee every morning, free iced coffee. And rather than every morning going into Panera Bread and grabbing another plastic cup, she just keeps hers in the car and she'll rinse it out and wash it out, but
every day,
daily. And not sure how many in this Panera membership time that she has used, how many plastic cups.
I'm sure there's a moment when she says it's time to replace this, but it's not often. It's probably weeks at a time that you'll reuse the same cup. I don't think it's the same straw. I think you use a reusable metal straw, another way that she's saving the world. But a few things I want you to know about my mom before we give her the mic. If many people ask me, Clara, how are you so well-spoken? You're looking at her. You're looking at the reason why I'm well-spoken, because I don't know how firm or stern you were with us in the use of filler words. There's never anything bad about a pause. It makes editing a lot easier. So she's a grammar nerd. I wouldn't call her a grammar Nazi, but she has had a few instances of responding to my email of Thoughts from Your Gal Pal with this is wrong. Love the support there. And I believe at one time she sent an email to our elementary school saying that there was a misspelling in the newsletter or on the outside, in some written deliverable or something from that a school produced. She emailed the principal or the school or the writing body to correct that.
She also religiously takes 2 walks every day, maybe more. She loves to get her steps in. She graduated from the Fitbit, now is an Apple Watch. The incessant Virginia has completed a workout is really just the greatest way to wake up and start your day when you're rolling out of bed.
She is a great helper. This woman loves to have a job. You give her a job like sweep the deck. She's like, I'm on it. Unload the dishwasher. I'm on it.
You text her at 8:48 p.m. last night and say, the surprise, be at my house at 7:30.
Yeah. I told her something was coming today, but she doesn't know. So she rocked up and we said, let's do it at 7:30 a.m. So it is 7:47 Eastern and we are recording the pod. Mom, as we switch the mics, I need you to finish this sentence. Maggie, you can hand her hers. When you go to the library, you get one
Fictional book
and one
non-fictional book.
Okay, Mom, welcome to the show. Were you surprised?
Yes, absolutely. I have to ask a technical question first.
Okay.
Which direction should I be looking? Where is the camera? Right there. Okay, because I've been looking at my girls, so I'd rather look at them than at the camera. But
You can look at us.
okay, but I'll go back and forth. Yes, one
Just- it's
fiction and one
casual.
nonfiction.
One fiction and one nonfiction.
Yes, ma'am.
Taylor goes, you should ask Mom, what are you on, a fiction or a nonfiction right now?
I'm on a nonfiction right now that I'd love to tell you about when it's time.
Okay.
I think it's time.
It's time. Well, because it's related. And before I continue, thank you for the gracious, realistic introduction. The book I'm reading right now, the nonfiction book, I didn't care for the fiction one. It's sitting on my chair, and I will return it later. Just didn't get into it. The nonfiction book is called Rebel with a Clause. If any of you know the phrase rebel without a cause, it's sort of a parody on that title. And it's a book about grammar.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. I'm very excited about it. I can't remember the name of the author, but she and her husband, true story, apparently, went around the country talking. I think she's a professor of English or something. Went around the country, stopping at random places and setting up a grammar table where where people could approach them with grammar questions, complaints, comments, etc.
What is your biggest thing you notice that people do all the time?
Well, besides the filler words, nothing in particular. I think most people are pretty good with grammar.
Plates are done. People are finished.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of little things that
Cakes
I've
are
heard.
done, correct.
Cakes are done.
I am not done taking a shower. I'm finished taking a shower. I had an English teacher more than 30 years ago tell me that, and I've never forgotten it. Cakes are done. People are finished.
Those will be her final words on her tombstone.
Yeah, we're writing that on your
Exactly.
tombstone,
That
actually.
will be part of my epitaph.
Okay, another thing I want to ask you is with manners, I think there are a certain few things that you would like to remind people of in manners, and I think one of them is how you respond to thank you.
I just realized, wait, this is a little pause. Mom, you came over for lunch a few Sundays ago, last Sunday, and Taylor was wearing a hat inside.
I've become more relaxed about that. I think my dad wore hats, but only occasionally. He wasn't one to wear a baseball cap as a rule. I almost feel like that's something that can be worn more of all the time, kind of, and younger people do that. Sort of an outdoor winter hat, if you will. It's kind of obvious. Oh, I'm indoors. I'll take my hat off because I'm not cold or something. And the baseball cap, I think, is a little different in that regard. So I don't notice it as much. It was enforced more when I was a kid, but I think there were fewer men in my life that I saw every day who wore hats or caps as much as the men in my life now, and just practiced almost without thought.
Okay, one more thing she needs to harp on before we get into it is when I say thank you, if somebody says thank you to you, what are appropriate responses and what is the big no-no?
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. Those are acceptable responses. No problem is not an acceptable response.
Why? Why
I
are you going to
understand
be crucified for that?
Not crucified. I understand the meaning behind it is it's no problem for me to have made dinner for you or to have opened the door for you or given you a gift. I understand the thought behind it. I just feel like the wording is almost more casual and not quite worthy of someone's sincere thanks. Just say, you're welcome.
I feel like no problem is more appropriate if you're sitting a favor. If everyone's sitting on the couch and someone says, oh crap, I forgot to turn the oven off. And someone gets up and says, oh, don't worry, I'll go turn it off. And it's like, no, sit back down. I'll get to it later. It's no problem. I'll do it right now.
That wasn't saying thank you.
Exactly.
Right.
That is the appropriate time to use no problem that I think has fallen into
And
the
I
thank
think
you.
literally adding the word it's makes it better, makes it more acceptable. I just feel like no problem is sort of dismissive. If you're going to say no problem, just don't even respond in some situations is my feeling. It takes no effort to say, you're welcome, or I was happy to do it, if you want to be, verbose about it.
I think we've covered more of a vocal warm-up, but this is a little segment to transition us into the meat of the episode. I came up with this part, so I'm gonna run with it. We would like for you to comment on some famous television and movie moms. I've picked some that you are familiar with, so just give us your thoughts, what you think makes them a good mom, or what you like about them. So the first one is Kitty Foreman from That 70s Show.
Good way to start. I do like Kitty, mostly because she has a sense of humor. I just love how she, even though she's kind of goofy and spacey, I feel like she's quite an antidote to her sort of irascible husband, Red. And she's just genuinely thoughtful, and being a mom is just her greatest pleasure in life. She's not always the best mom, but she tries hard all the time. Plus, she's a nurse. My mom and my two sisters, well, my younger sister is retired. My younger sister is still actively nursing, but the other two women in my life were also nurses, so I have a particular fondness for nurses. So yes, I like Kitty just because she's fun, not afraid to be goofy, obviously loves her children more than life itself.
Mom number 2, Claire Dunphy in Modern Family.
Okay, Claire. I used to be sort of not jealous, but she's had 3 kids and she's this big around, so that sort of thing. I was like, geez, you kind of bug me. But she again is herself, not afraid to be goofy, to fail, and to just admit it, and to go off on these crazy tangents. It's like, what are you thinking? And again, I like how she loves her children very much. She loves her husband, but she's not afraid to be herself, go have fun, think about herself, because I think a lot of times moms forget that.
Okay, our favorite, Elizabeth James from The Parent Trap.
Oh, God. Not only is she beautiful, and I know that really isn't, just absolutely...
Timeless.
Exactly.
Timeless,
elegant,
beautiful.
stylish, the voice, the clothes, the talent. It's kind of a far-fetched concept. Great movie, far-fetched concept.
A wedding dress designer in London?
Well,
Come
just-
on.
Who gave up one of her daughters?
That's what I thought.
Oh, that's fucked up. That's actually really
Excuse
fucked
me,
up.
that doesn't happen. But anyway, and of course I loved it at the end.
Wait, if me and Maggie were separated at birth, would you choose?
Oh, geez, don't ask me that. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Who decided which one,
I think they tossed a coin.
maybe, whatever. It's just,
remember that
it's so implausible.
That was Dad's
say the least.
comment about that movie, and I was way too young to just realize that. And he said, "What kind of divorce attorney came up with this
Yeah. You take
situation?"
one, I take the other. But she's just perfect. And not only is this, phenomenal woman and designer and everything in her own right, but just when she realizes it's her daughter, her other daughter, the one she hadn't seen forever, she just melts,
Our last mother we'd like to ask about is Sophia from Golden Girls.
As I was thinking, as I'm remembering Sophia, and Golden Girls, by the way, is one of my favorite shows, because Sophia is petite and, gray-haired, silver-haired, and outspoken, she reminds me of my mother, Persis Christopher Hicks Scoggins Mitchell Martin. Think about that for a while. Who was outspoken and petite and never let you get too big for your britches, as she would say. It was easy to be humble around my mom. So I admire Sophia for that, just her outspokenness. But obviously loves her daughter on the show, and that shines through. But I also feel like Sophia had been through a lot in her life. Sometimes she told stories about it, and sometimes she didn't.
It's Mother's Day. I want to hear a little bit more about growing up and what your mom was like. So for those of you who are listening who are not in the family, you were raised by your stepmother, and within the blended family, there were 10 of you, 10 total. What was it like growing up with that many siblings, being on the younger end, and perhaps not getting it? Actually, I'm not going to ask you any more questions. What was it like growing up the way you grew up in a couple minutes?
Okay. Hard to compress into a couple minutes. We had a total number of 10. The largest number that ever lived together under one roof was 7. The way it went, my stepmother's children and my father's children, Her youngest was slightly older than my dad's oldest. So we have an 18-year range from the oldest to the youngest. Just the youngest of my stepmother's children, Colin, my youngest stepbrother, lived, and Aaron for a while too, another brother, lived with us, the four of us in one house. I don't know any differently. We always shared a room. I shared a room my entire life until I moved out. I shared a room with my sister because there was not enough room for children to have their own bedrooms. And I never knew any different. We had a big group around the table, lots of noise, lots of talking, lots of food. And I don't know that I didn't get enough attention. I got as much attention as I could get, given that there were so many kids. I loved growing up in a big family. It was fun, particularly holidays. My older brothers were kind of, not exotic, but they had all these experiences. Sometimes they'd bring friends home. They brought excitement to the house. It was in the days before, cell phones and lots of video games and all that stuff. So we had to kind of generate our own excitement. And I think being the younger one, we were kind of picked on by the older brothers, but I think it made us, my sister and me, kind of a little bit tougher. And I knew I enjoyed growing up in a big family, but I did not want to have a big family. Mm-hmm. So 3 children was enough. But to this day, I love all the extended family that has come out of this.
Tell us more about your mom. She's quite a character, you indicated before.
My mom was quite a character. She and my dad married when I was 4. As I said, she had 6 of her own and then married my dad who had 4. Very strong woman for being 5'2", closer to 5 feet by the time she died, and not much over 100 pounds. Very talented in so many ways. Musically, she gardened, she was a good cook, she caned, she was very just creative. Could do anything well, sewed. She didn't sew a lot when I was growing up, but did for her own children, when they were little. She taught dance. As I said, she was very musical. And I like to point this out. I mentioned, I think earlier, that she was a nurse, and as my sisters were, and she and my older sister went to nursing school together. My mom went to nursing school when she was in her early 40s, and she and my sister were the first mother-daughter students to graduate together from that nursing school. So she started a whole new career in middle age, if you will, and she was not an easy person. I think she'd been through a lot. Sometimes brought a lot on to herself with her personality, but we were very close. Some of the things she's told me over the years still resonate in my mind, and I think about her. I think about her a lot. She taught me a lot, and both good and bad. Ways to be and ways not to be.
I think that's a good segue into the next question. Flash forward, you get married. You are living abroad. You decide to start your family. Or do you? You find out that you're pregnant with Emily. Well, side note, we'd like to hear the comment that the doctor made.
Of course.
But I want to know, your mother taught you lots of things, ways to be, ways not to be. At that moment in time, if you can go back 30 some years, what kind of mom did you want to be? What did you envision?
Tell us what was going on in your life when you found out you were pregnant.
Well, we were ending our 2nd year in Egypt. As you know, Dad had an assignment there for 2 years. It could have been 3. 2 was enough. There were a lot of advantages to living overseas, but we were ready to come home. He was ready to not have that particular job assignment anymore. And when we found out we were pregnant, that was just, all the more reason we felt to come back to the U.S. to have Emily there, rather than in Egypt. So it was a bit of a surprise, the timing in terms of becoming pregnant, but not the idea, or the idea of starting a family. So it was kind of interesting because I wasn't sure if I was pregnant. I don't want to get too TMI, but anyway, things were sort of different with my body. I thought, what's going on? And finally I thought, oh, maybe I should go have a pregnancy test. So to include the story about the doctor, so we got referred to a doctor locally there in Egypt and went and had the pregnancy test, and believe it or not, had an ultrasound early on, which they didn't really do back then, unless they thought there was a problem. I was maybe 2 months pregnant, something like that. So we had the ultrasound and everything in the doctor's office, and I'll never forget, in the clinic there, and then I'll never forget walking into the doctor's office, and he's sitting behind his desk smoking a cigarette, and says to Dad and me, "Oh, yes, you're pregnant. Da, da, da. Let's hope it's a boy."
That right there is 1990s.
So I'm
healthcare.
like, okay, and didn't say anything. And also Egypt, of course. And we left and came back. And then, it ended up, we came back to New Hampshire, and I saw a doctor there. And then we moved to Texas for 6 months where she was born. So I got a doctor there. So it was a little bit of, transition. And yeah, it was, but everything went fine. In terms of what kind of mother I wanted to be, as I said, rest in peace, Persis. She's been gone 9 years now. There were certain ways that I knew I wanted to be loving, be a teaching, nurturing mom. I remember one of the things that Mom said to me many times was, it is my job to teach you to grow up and go out on your own. It is not my job to keep you here as a child. I'm supposed to teach you how to function. And to her credit, if something had happened to her when Peggy, my sister, and I were young, middle school, high school, of course it would have been a great loss. But she taught us the basic life skills, was constantly encouraging us to take responsibility. So that's the kind of mom that I wanted to be, was to not only be loving and nurturing, but, give them wings, give the kids wings, as they say, teach them how to, to function on their own. And I would just be in the background, applauding them.
After Emily, you have these two fine specimens in front of you in the form of us. Yes. But if between the siblings, who was your favorite at each stage of life? In belly, in utero?
Oh, wow.
Newborn, toddler, and we can go from there. We will not, you can rank us as adults. I think you should.
I think literally physically speaking, Emily was my first. I had morning sickness. I didn't know for a while that I was pregnant. And
you're stupid.
I have to say, didn't practice as good health habits with her as I did with you two. I was not a breakfast eater at that time in my life, and I paid for that, being pregnant. Got sick several times, passed out once or twice, and then I was like, oh, what's wrong? Anyway, so after I figured out and started getting smart, the pregnancy was good, but it was a lot of transition, moving back from Egypt, being in New Hampshire temporarily, going to Texas. So I'd say that the pregnancy was a little rough with Emily. So I would think in terms of the favorite in utero, it was probably Clara, because just because we kind of tried for Clara, and I was tracking, temperature and cycles and all that kind of stuff. And once we realized we were pregnant with you.
I was wanted, is what you're saying.
There you go.
I was the only wanted one.
And I felt good, and I ate a lot, and I gained 40 pounds. So I don't know if that was good, but anyway, I felt great. And then, I felt good. I felt good with you too, Maggie. I just
didn't try as hard for me.
Yeah.
Okay, newborn.
Emily, probably. Maggie had, I think, a little bit of colic. You'd had problems at birth. So, you weren't any problem. It was just, I was very worried about you, and she had a heart monitor and all this kind of stuff. And there was a lot going on medically, things to worry about. And then Clara was, I think you were pretty good as an infant. And then when you got a little older, you were just more needy and kind of fussy, and
still is.
Yeah. And I was like, oh gosh, luckily Emily was 4 when Clara was born, so she was pretty self-sufficient and she could help me a little bit. But I remember, just total truth, and I've told you this before, when we found out we were pregnant with Maggie, I thought, oh gosh, we have this kind of needy little baby here, and now we're going to have another one. But you outgrew that once you got mobile. That was part of it. You just kind of sat there in the middle of the room because you didn't crawl and walk very early. So, but once you got past that, you were fine. I'd say Emily as like a little girl. I guess maybe because she was my only one. 3 and 4 years old. We just did everything together. We were little pals. I think middle school into high school, it was more Maggie. Just I think with your activities and your friends and your softball. I really feel like the softball. Not that Dad didn't come or your sisters didn't, but that was kind of our thing. The tournaments and all that stuff. I have a lot of really happy memories about that time. And then, I don't know. It's hard to say.
Why don't you just say a little bit more about what you think of us as adults to round this question out, and also bring the mic closer to your mouth.
Sorry. And I don't know. I think probably Clara, you and I have been closer as you maybe just talking more, like when you were in college, and after that, Emily went off to New York, and not that I didn't talk to Maggie, but you were busy with your friends and stuff. It just seemed like we needed to connect more when you were, say, out of high school on into college and beyond. But, I read these things on Instagram, the memes, about, oh, being with my adult children is so wonderful. And it is, in part because I can look back and feel a little sense of pride that I helped you all get to where you are now. But also, not that I don't worry about you or care about you, but I don't need to worry about you in the same way. And we can just be friends. And that's the greatest thrill. It's like, yep, I did my job, and now these beautiful, well-adjusted, happy, successful women are my friends. And I don't have a lot of other friends, so I'm kind of happy to include you in that special group.
That's really sweet. But also, we're good enough friends that we could convince her to come over at 7:30 in the morning to get roasted on a Friday.
Well, it's better 7:30 in the morning than 7:30 at night, right?
That's true. Yeah, you'd be asleep.
Since I turned into a pumpkin.
Mom, what are some cliches about being a mom that are completely true? Tropes, things that are said. And what are totally false, if you want to add that too.
I'm trying to think of a cliche. Well, one, I don't know that
your whole life changes when you have a baby.
It does. It does. It should. I've told all of my children that, and now one has a baby, and I think she knows that it's the truth. I said, having a baby changes your life completely, and it should change your life completely. If you don't want your life to be changed completely, don't have a baby, because it's not fair to you and it's not fair to the child. So that definitely is true. Another thing, I don't know if it's a trope, but something I don't agree with, I've heard women say or seen it in, media and in books, oh, I just wish my kids were little again. I don't wish that. I loved you all when you were infants.
That's kind of fucked up. It's like, I don't like you now. I wish you were a kid.
Well, I just think,
I wish I could control you. I wish you could be cute and performative again. I don't want you to have an opinion. That's how I see that.
Well, see, that's why I almost, not that I didn't love you when you were little and have all those memories, but I couldn't communicate with you. I look at Emily with Jonas now, and I'm sure he understands a lot, but if something's bugging him, or he's hungry, or he's tired, he can't tell her that. He can't speak, a language that she can understand right now. And that can be really frustrating. I remember, not so much with you kids, well, maybe a little bit, but then Emily would translate. And I remember finding that when I babysat, just a little side story. I'd babysit, let's say a 4-year-old and an 18-month-old or 2-year-old. And, the younger one was getting frustrated and trying to tell me something in their sort of gibberish. And I couldn't understand what they were saying. So I'd turn to the older sibling and say, what did he say? And then, he or she would translate. So that's one thing that I found frustrating, was trying to care for you kids when you were real little and couldn't tell me what you wanted or what was wrong.
That's why I wouldn't au pair for babies. I know I'll be okay if I have kids, but I wanted them to be verbal. It's too frustrating.
Yeah, it's too frustrating. So and again, this is maybe a cliche that I do agree with, or I enjoyed every stage of life. I would never want to go back.
You don't want me when I'm 13?
Absolutely not. Or even, Maggie when she was 5, or, Emily when she was, 1 and just learning how to walk. That was great at the time. But I want to move on, and I'm glad that you girls have moved on. So yeah, I don't wish you all were babies again. It's been there, done that. And it's exhausting. And another thing that I find true, somebody told me this. I mean, it's obvious. When children are little, they are more physically demanding. Obviously, you have to care for them, feed them, bathe them, dress them, whatever. When they're older, they're much more emotionally demanding, because they have emotional issues and social things, or things in school,
friends, bullies,
all that stuff. And you can't fix it. That's the hardest part, I think, about even now when you girls have issues or challenges in your life. I can listen. I can give my support and my love and my advice if you want it, but I can't fix it. And that's the hardest thing about being a parent of grown children.
Mom.
Yes.
You recently, in the last year, became a grandma. And I want to add the caveat that if Harry was listening, I'm sorry, because she's been a grandmom for 7 years. How's that been going?
It's great. It's wonderful. It's everything that grandparents say about being a grandparent. I get all the benefits of a little baby and very few, if any, of the drawbacks. I guess we've actually cared for Jonas. We've actually not cared for Jonas at all without either parent, but once now, when Emily was on her trip, we went and helped Scott, if you will, with Jonas, but we haven't done it one-on-one. It is tiring, and I haven't even done it for a whole week or a whole weekend without help, but it's reminding me of what I just said a minute ago, how physically demanding infants and toddlers are. You have to do everything for them or watch, now that Jonas is mobile, that he doesn't, hurt himself. But it's thrilling in two ways. One, to just, see this cute little baby, and two, to see my own child experiencing motherhood. I think it's fabulous. But I don't have primary responsibility for this child. And the other thing that I enjoy about it, or that maybe some grandparents wouldn't, but I have no problem with, is the realization that this is their child, not mine. They have their own ways of raising him and their own agenda, if you will, and I'm happy to respect that. And I'm not going to fight them, because it's not I don't have any disagreement with their attitude so far, and that's theirs anyway. I respect that, and I'm just happy to spend time with Jonas when I can. So it's wonderful.
So let's pick on you a little bit for being a grandma. So it was probably 3 days, 4 days into his life where the sacred spot of Virginia's lock screen so quickly flipped from a picture of the three of us girls to a picture of Jonas. I just turned off her phone, but sure enough, background was a picture of Jonas being cute.
Last question before we wrap it up.
Okay.
What is the best part about being a mom?
You're looking at her.
I could have never imagined my life without children, to start off. If I couldn't have had them, I don't know if I would have adopted or not, or just been the great fun, auntie who spoils kids. It's just, cliche. The miracle of life and the miracle of birth and all that, knowing that for better or worse, there's a piece of me in all three of you, and a piece of my family. I feel like it's that, that heritage, that tradition that's passed down. But I think just watching you all grow up and having been a part of that shaped you in some way, but also seeing how you've kind of gone off on your own way. I've given you, again, the cliche, sort of the foundation, the basis, and then you've taken off from there. It's just rewarding in a way that nothing else for me is. And also, to finish on a lighthearted note, I have 3 people who hopefully take care of me.
Oh, God.
When I can't take care of myself.
I don't know if that's lighthearted. I think that's...
Well, it's just, I always talk about that, particularly with Maggie. We're gonna you can buy the property and have the little granny, the guest house.
I love it.
Or the little granny shed or whatever.
Yeah.
And, I will look at these listings. I'm looking at you for now for the houses, and it's good in-law potential, in the basement. I'm like, check.
Yep.
If you're okay with it, I know.
No, I am.
Far away.
Yeah.
Oh no. Well, not. We just got to work it out so Dad can be far away and you can be close by.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Speaking of, we've had 3 missed calls since we've been recording.
Okay, Mom, do you have any questions for me or Maggie before we round it out?
Oh wow.
Turn the tables. It's okay if not.
Based on my raising of you, mine and Dad's, but I know that we're talking about me and Mother's Day and all that. I think both of you want to have children at some point. That's part of your life plan. How much of my raising, I'm not looking for compliments. I'm just asking what.
Okay. Well, yeah. What will we take as
what
moms,
will you
what do
take
we
away
hope to take?
from my raising of you? What are the high points? Yeah, I definitely want to do that. And you can address things you definitely don't want to do. But
Maggie, I think you're maybe more on the precipice of this than I am, considering you're married.
Maybe top 3. Yes, I'm going to do that. And top 3, no way, never. If you can do that.
I think we've talked about this a lot in terms of what do kids want. We were talking about this last night. And kids always want autonomy and choices. And
It's the same thing. Attention and autonomy.
Attention and autonomy. Excuse me.
Dedicated attention.
Dedicated attention and autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
And we've discussed, in raising kids or, essentially being with kids, like Claire's au pair job, give them as much autonomy as you can. So I loved that even if I wore the same sweatshirt to school every day in 3rd grade, you let me pick out my clothes. I think that's a really simple way to give children a daily dose of autonomy. That's a light one. I like that. I really like the general concept of chores that you instilled in us, that we have personal responsibility that we need to do, but also community service as part of being in a household. And I think it's a great balance of, you're part of a family and you need to participate in the family stuff and the community areas, and then you also have your own personal responsibility. It's a good lesson to instill early on. What do you think, Clara?
I think Dad and you doing the family meetings actually makes a lot of sense given our life. I mean, I think we all were given a voice very early on. I think, which we haven't interviewed my dad, but Dad having Dad having 4 sisters, him being the only son, and him seeing his sisters treated the same, growing up in the 70s, working on a farm, being like, oh, Greg didn't have to do more because he was a boy. All of his sisters had to milk the cows and take care of the farm and do whatever. I think he told us a lot, don't let being a girl ever make you feel like you have a free pass into not being able to be capable or speak and it probably maybe backfired sometimes, because I think you gave us a little bit too much free birth to speak our minds. I don't ever feel like I felt like I couldn't say what I felt. And maybe I said what I felt too often and too brusquely, and it maybe came across as cruel or offended you. I'm sure I've made you cry many a times as a mom, because I have known for my biting words. I know. And I liked that there was that sense of everybody had an equal voice in the house as much as they could. And I also, this might be a point of contention, I like that you forced to make us take piano lessons, because, not forced, but you strongly encouraged us, maybe forced, because I think that I personally believe that made us more well-rounded. And I believe that being able to read music should be as important as speaking, like reading words. Like, I think everybody should have a basic understanding of reading music, just not only because it's such a part of being a human, but also they've done so many studies where if you have musical ability, you can then
it helps in
other areas, and it can help even with reading and other things. I don't know if I can think of anything that I would absolutely not do. Yeah, I can't think of. There's no. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'll end up being a pretty similar mom to you, I would say. Maybe a little bit more. I might be a little bit more OCD and anal and run a tight ship.
I do have a couple. Oh, go ahead. No,
that's all.
Just a couple quick responses. I know we're wrapping up, that your comments made me think of. Again, harking back to my mother. I just said this to Emily yesterday. It's something that my mother said to me innumerable times. Life is a series of choices. Mm-hmm. We all choose whatever we do, and that affects our life. And she, to her credit, we were at the tail end of her child raising. I call my sister Peggy and me, we were the tail end, and kind of were little peas in a pod for many years. My mother was kind of tired of raising children by the time we came along, and I know that, and it just is the way circumstances dictated it. But that's one reason I encourage my children not to wait too long, if they can, to have children, because you need to be fresh and energetic enough and patient enough to be a good parent. But anyway, one of the many, many things she said to me was not only about the choices, but again, teaching children to be functional, to be self-sufficient. That was real important. But that was one of her things, and I tried to instill in you girls. A child of 1 or 2 or 3, 2 or 3, can choose his or her clothing. That's a choice. Or they can choose to play with the red truck, and that means that their friend's going to play with the blue truck. And those are things that children can do to start learning the consequences of their actions and have that autonomy. And also the chores. I've told Emily as well, in terms of Jonas. In not too long, from now, he can have a chore. You need to put your toys away. He can be taught to feed the dog and do other things that little kids can handle. So that was one thing that I wanted to mention, was the autonomy, and the other thing about having the voice. I always said, kind of jokingly, particularly about Maggie, but about all of you, I think, I knew you were never going to get in trouble because someone coerced you or persuaded you to do something. You were going to get in trouble because you decided to do it. And those were the kind of women that Dad and I wanted to raise, was women who were not going to be doormats, who were going to make their own choices, and no one was going to sway them from that. Good or bad, you were going to make your own choices and not be subservient or pushed under by anyone. And that will do nothing but serve you well,
Amen.
Mom, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Woo-hoo. Okay. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hope you enjoyed.